Welcome into the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show. Lisa Matthews here with you, Zach Galia, Felipe Corral, and yes, it is a Wednesday because tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so no show. We will be here at work, but no show for us. So I thought because, it's 'tis the season to be thankful, tell me something that you are thankful for in your fantasy team.
Well, I mean, I'm 10-2,
Yeah.
so I'm pretty thankful across the board, I think. But I would say I'm probably most thankful for Zane Gonzalez because, as you know, on any show that I'm on, I talk all about him. But he's been consistent. The only time I've had to pick up another kicker was last week when we were on a bye, and been riding with Zane ever since.
I could have called that one.
Yeah. So
Your
I
boy.
got some good players.
I have an interview with him later. Do you want to come in
I would like
just
to
stare at him?
Cheer him on.
just
Cheer him on.
stand behind
Give
him
him
with
your
a
thanks.
sign. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's it. Everyone else, I mean, I've had some good weeks from some different players, but
But your record is definitely something to be thankful
say so.
for. I would take that any day. All right, Felipe.
I think I'm thankful for Zach because, and he knows where I'm going with this,
Easy,
but
Lord.
he
easy.
dropped Chris Godwin like week 2 or something like that. And I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
and I picked him up like right away. I mean, Bruce Arians' offensive, scheme and all that. So I picked him up, and after last week's performance,
Top of the board.
I went
Sorry.
into Zach's office and I went up to him and I'm like, I just want to say thank you, Zach, for dropping
He
Chris
just
Godwin.
dropped a gift.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're 10-2, like you have to help some teams that are less fortunate.
You never
than
helped me out.
So
What are you
like,
talking about?
I gotta drop some guys here and there, but yeah, I mean, he didn't quite work on my team at that time, but I mean,
yeah,
I should have
I would
kept
make
him.
him work on, and you
Yes,
just
I
have to
should have
make
kept
him work because he did lead the league.
What about you?
I'm thankful that we all make the playoffs
Yeah.
because round one, baby, are what Kyle likes to call the loser bowl this
Yeah.
week. So wish me luck. Round one, you guys have the bye.
We'll be
Chris.
chilling because we have the
you guys
bye.
will be chilling,
Relax.
Winning records. That's
but winning right. Well, yeah. Let's take a look actually at the scoreboard following week 12 for our league. Jones, Suggs, and Harmony got the win, barely though.
Without Chris Godwin,
Without
I'm not
Chris
worried about
Godwin.
it.
You're not
Ain't
worried about that one. Okay, so I got the loss, but I wasn't too worried about that again because
You're in the playoffs.
I'm in the playoffs. I actually have Lamar Jackson in my other league, so I was kind of like, and I needed him to go off, so it's kind of like, well, I'm just going to take the L on this.
Yeah.
So Kyle, he got his third win of the season. Did AZCC Dream Team and Fantasy Rook, did they set their lineups? Like what happened here?
I would like to say yes, but let me.
I'm gonna have to.
take a
I'm gonna have to
look.
have a.
I mean, there was only one player on Melanie's team that was on a bye.
Okay.
Everyone else just kind of,
Just
yeah.
did
decided to take their own
And
bye
for
week.
Craig?
Yes. And Craig, that's just his squad this
Okay.
week.
So
All
do
right.
you play Craig or Melanie?
Melanie this week. I
Oh.
play Melanie this week, round one. Wish me luck. Dun dun dun. Fresh Prince of Air Raid, Felipe, big win for you in week 12. Of
Chris
course.
Godwin.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin and Christian McCaffrey will win you any game, any week of the season. And I had to, give Taylor her third L of the season.
Yes,
She's been
just her
outstanding
third.
this season.
Just her
but
third.
Just the third. I mean,
There's
she
going
has
to be
a nice
some
bye.
battles coming up in the playoffs, something to keep your eyes on as we get further along into that. Well, let's take a look at the top 10 following week 12 here. You mentioned Chris Godwin, 37.4 points. The second most fantasy points in his career. He caught 7 of 8 targets for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Bucs win over the Falcons. Felipe, take it away with your guy.
I mean, those 9 touchdowns leads the NFL wide receivers. He's top 10 in catch rate with the 72% catch rate. He's averaging 8.6 targets a game. Volume is key in fantasy football, and it's his third game this season with 125 yards receiving or more and 2 touchdowns this season. So, again, thank you, Zach.
Really no surprise that he's ranked in the top 10 coming in at number 8.
And
overall.
he's a slot receiver in the Bruce Arians offense. You know what he did with Larry Fitzgerald during his years here. So I mean, it's really no surprise. It's his second year in the league. So you've seen his evolution throughout the season, and given that he has Mike Evans also in that wide receivers group, gives him a little bit more space.
Yeah.
Frees him up.
Yeah.
So.
Smart enough to draft him, but not smart enough to keep him. So
it happens.
Do both.
Let's go down to Lamar Jackson, who just had an unbelievable performance on Monday Night Football. I mean, no question he's in the MVP conversation. 36.2, 6 points in that big Monday Night Football win over the Rams. He threw 5 touchdowns, rushed for 95 yards. Second-ranked player in fantasy
in all
football.
of fantasy. Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at quarterbacks, like the first ones off the board this year were, Pat Mahomes, you got, whoever else, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, but it never was necessarily that Lamar Jackson was a high pick. And, I mean, you could see some promise last year. It was a relatively rough finish for him, but just the Ravens buying in and kind of building their whole offense around Lamar. And, I mean, he's clearly proven he knows what he's doing, and I mean, he's having an MVP season.
And I think context is key, because you see those 24 pass touchdowns, coming out of the draft, out of college, I should say. A lot of the critique was like, can he be a pocket passer?
Yeah.
In his last 4 games alone, he has 11 pass touchdowns. He has a 76% completion percentage. So, I mean, for all those, I want to say, haters that said he couldn't necessarily, throw the ball, I mean, there it is.
Yeah, well, I love a good story like that. Just prove him wrong at that point. And just what he's been able to do this season. I mean, I think between him, Russell Wilson, obviously another lethal quarterback in fantasy football, there's no question where they will be ranked next season. So
yeah, and I was still in Pittsburgh during this draft when Lamar Jackson was taken, and as soon as he got taken by Baltimore, I was like, this guy's going to haunt us for like 15 years. So, I mean, not that I'm any football expert by any means, but you could just see.
What'd you talk about? You're on the show.
Yeah,
no, right? You're on the show for a reason.
Fantasy football, but real football. But I mean, it's just you could see how dangerous he was in college and just his skill set, and all you needed was an organization that would get behind him and design an offense for him. And I mean, sadly enough, Baltimore seems to be the place, and he's showing what he can do.
Sadly enough, many tears across a lot of teams who passed up on him. Yeah. But I love to see him proving them wrong and just perform week after week. I do not have him, obviously, in this league, but I just love the fact that I could swoop him up in my other league. And, I mean, I just rely on him week after week. Yeah. So anyone who has him, we should have a keeper league too. I think. Can we keep some players on our roster? I know Christian McCaffrey's one that you like to keep, Felipe, there. 34.3 points last week in week 12. I mean, every single week he is just a go-to, obviously.
Let's get it.
Number 1 ranked player in fantasy football. I mean, gosh.
It blows my mind that he is like the one player that team performance has no bearing on what he does. The Panthers could lose 65-10 and he would somehow still end up with 30 fantasy points. It's just, it blows my mind how he just kind of does his own thing no matter who they're playing or how his team is doing. He's always, at the top of the list.
And I mean, he's outperforming the entire backfield of 27 teams this season, according to NFL research. So that just,
I could have guessed that.
Context is key. That's a 630-point performance this season. And it is in his last 2 games, he has 20 catches. So when you talk about PPR fantasy, I mean,
there's gonna be points.
There's no one better to have than Christian McCaffrey or Lamar Jackson, I should say. So they're in their own league of their own.
My other fantasy league is a keeper league with my family and friends, and I have
Christian McCaffrey.
Well,
let's get it, Zach.
So he's going to be on my team as long as he plays in the NFL.
For as long. So going into, we're going to take a little dip into next season with our league. Who would you pick number 1 overall?
I think it's
Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. He went number 2 this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an argument for Saquon too, but it's just I don't know that the Giants' offense is kind of guided as much as McCaffrey is in Carolina. So I would say you could kind of go either way. Saquon's having somewhat of a down year, but so are the Giants. But yeah, I would if it's me, I'm taking McCaffrey.
Well, let's take a look, obviously, at the Cardinals coming off a bye, but up against the Rams this week in Week 13. Kyler Murray, let's take a look at his stats through 12 weeks, a total of 219 fantasy points. He's ranked 9th player overall in fantasy football, which is pretty impressive. And I just think we're going to see more from him in these next 5 games. I think that he's had these outstanding performances, obviously, both throwing and running the ball as well. But I think he still has that game that we're waiting to see, where it's just Lamar Jackson numbers, I believe.
Right.
And I think it's going to come very soon.
Yeah, and I think, looking into next year, when you're talking about top QBs in fantasy football, it's it's Pat Mahomes, it's Lamar Jackson, and I think Kyler's right there with those guys.
He definitely fits in that conversation.
Right, and this is a rookie quarterback, which everyone seems to keep forgetting that this is still every game is his first week 13, first week 14, and it's crazy to see what he's doing just as a rookie.
Now, Felipe, we obviously saw the success that Lamar Jackson had against the Rams. Similar, not built the same, but skill set, being able to, hurt them in the passing game and with his feet as well. Can Murray emulate that here in Week 13? What kind of success can he have?
Yeah,
this
I
week?
think the Ravens set the blueprint to defeat the Rams, because I think prior to last week, no one necessarily scored a rushing touchdown on the Rams in like 5 or 6 weeks or something. But, Kyler Murray has had 30 rushing yards in the past 3 games. He had 23 points against the Niners on Thursday Night Football, and then 26 against the Buccaneers and 26 against the Niners again. So, to be doing this at the level he's doing it at,
right,
against, good competition in the 49ers, I think, if you have Kyler Murray, you should feel good going into this week against the Rams, especially given what Lamar Jackson and the Ravens did against them. The blueprint's there. It's just
the blueprint's there, but you don't want to judge them based off that one performance, right? That defense, because they are good at defending the pass. And you look at Christian Kirk coming into this week, he has 46 catches, 3 touchdowns, 508 yards through 12 weeks, 34th ranked wide receiver in fantasy football. Obvious start if you have them for me this week, just because they are coming off a short week. They were obliterated. The blueprint's out, like you said, Felipe. So, did I say that? Oh, whatever. We're moving on. I'm like, I can't even speak right now. I'm thinking about food right now.
Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's tomorrow. So, obvious start for me this week. Now, looking at Larry Fitzgerald through 12 weeks, Fitz is the 29th ranked wide receiver in fantasy football this year, but he's consistent, steady numbers every week. Start or sit, guys, this week?
It's hard to gauge who you're starting as a wide receiver. Like, this offense is basically built for fantasy owners, like obviously not in the football world, but it's very, very beneficial to any fantasy owners. The only problem is you never know who's going to kind of turn up for that one game. So,
right.
The opportunities are there for Larry. The opportunities are there for Christian. If you have one of them, I would say that they're both worth the start. If you somehow have both of them on your team, I'm probably leaning a little bit more Christian than Larry, just because Christian has that kind of big play ability.
Yeah.
But both are pretty solid starts, I think, this week.
And I think history's on Larry Fitzgerald's side, because he's had more receptions against the Rams, 185, than any other player in NFL history has against any single opponent. Rams have given up the 8th most fantasy points to slot receivers. He's not going to get shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. Christian Kirk most likely will be, so I would choose Larry Fitzgerald if I had the option or the decision to either start Christian Kirk or Larry Fitzgerald. And this is an interesting stat that I found on Football Outsiders. He's had a 72% catch rate, which is top 5 in the league, which means 72 of the passes completed to Larry have been caught. Other names in that top 10 list include Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin. So, Larry Fitzgerald's still doing it.
Yes, he posts steady numbers week to week. You
sure.
can rely on him. So if you have him, start him definitely. Now, we get into the run game with this team. So much up in the air, obviously, as a David Johnson owner. I'm going to be gambling a lot this week. I don't know. I want to see what changes are made throughout this bye week. Obviously, Cliff has talked a lot about it per game.
Right.
And they're going to go with the hot hand, or obviously that was Kenyon Drake against the 49ers because he liked what they did with them in week 9. So I started David Johnson thinking that he would still get some touches. Obviously, that was a 0 for me that week. So I'm really curious to see what this offense looks like, because Chase Edmonds is coming back in the run game.
That's
so
another kicker.
There's so many elements to this. Fortunate for me, in my team, I have Aaron Jones and I have Zeke Elliott, so those are my RB1 and 2. maybe put David Johnson in my flex. I don't know.
That's the question for you, though. Like,
I know.
what would you do, though? Because you're the one that has him.
It's hard to say because for me, it's playoff time, right? So I need to put everything out there. I think this week I'm going, not knowing what it's going to look like, I'm not going to play David Johnson. He's going to be sitting on my bench, unfortunately, because I want to see what adjustments they're making, how they utilize David Johnson. If I know that he's going to be utilized as he should in the pass game, because he's a prolific playmaker and is a mismatch in the pass game, then I feel confident in playing him next week in my flex position. But right now, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of puts even more pressure on owners this time of year because it's playoff time. You know, some leagues you may have to wait until next week for playoffs to start. Some are, some of the bigger leagues start this week.
It'd be so nice if I was on a bye this week. I could just kind of see how things are operated, how David Johnson is utilized, and then next week I can confidently make my decision. But this week I'm just kind of
I think any Cardinals running back at this point is kind of a gamble, just because I would say any of the three, Chase Edmonds included, could have a huge game. So, but do you pick the right one?
Right, it's like, which one do you go with?
It's a definitely high risk, high reward across the board. I mean, who knows? David Johnson could get the bulk of the carries this week and prove everybody wrong. And I mean, you never know. It could be Kenyon Drake gets the ball, Chase Edmonds gets the ball. I mean, these are the kind of decisions that move you to the next round of the playoffs.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, whoever you have in the Cardinals backfield, do your research and feel very comfortable about playing them and go from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so much even the backfield for me, because if they want to run the ball and they give the majority of the carries to Kenyon Drake or Chase Edmonds, it's how David Johnson can be utilized in the pass game, because we know he can be a mismatch. And I looked back at his 3 games before getting injured. So week 4 versus Seattle, he led the team 8 receptions, 99 yards. Some of the receivers aren't even posting those kind of numbers week to week as Cardinals now. So week 5 versus the Bengals, led the team again in reception, 65 yards and 93 yards rushing. So I'm looking back at these numbers. I'm like, he could be utilized in in some way, so I can get points in some way. Just give him the ball.
I think the bye week benefited Cliff Kingsbury in that regard. That he had another week where he didn't have to play. He can analyze. Okay, I have time how to utilize Kenyon Drake and David Johnson. So I mean, I'm in another league that's a 12-team. It's a deeper league, and I have David Johnson. But at this point, I have no one else to start. So I'm gonna go ahead and start him. But I mean, talking about research, I don't think it's on his side, because in the 2 games he's played in since his injury, he was outsnapped 94-36 by Kenyon Drake, outcarried 26-5, and he's had only 1 target to Drake's 14, out of the backfield. So
it's not trending in a good direction, specifically in the run game. I know that, but for the Cardinals, not in fantasy world, it's a good problem to have with all these weapons. I'm excited to see how everyone is utilized, and the more the merrier. But in fantasy world, we're
and if
about the points.
And if David Johnson blows up, I'll make sure to tweet something at you with the little.
You definitely should.
You should have started David Johnson fantasy.
Have you ever done it before?
I don't think so.
All right, guys. Well, you guys enjoy the bye week and Thanksgiving. Everyone, enjoy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.
Eat some good.